Thank you so very much, Chris. That was very kind of you. And it's funny, when you say stuff and as the individual, I don't get so emotional. But when you mention my three grandchildren, I almost start to cry. It's just one of those things that touches you in a different way. So thank you for that. That was very lovely. And fingers crossed that, as I mentioned to Rebecca, I'm not in my either home office or our office. I'm at a client's place because we have our regulatory affairs meeting immediately following this talk. So I hope everything goes well. It was okay during the test, so hopefully it'll work out now. And I'm hoping that you can see the screen. Yay, we're off to a flying start. I love that. That's wonderful. So, we're going to talk today, and I really want it to be audience participation at any time. So if you have a question or you want to add something to what I'm saying, please, by all means, we're a small group, and let's just keep it sort of open and warm and friendly. So the title's kind of fun because most of us as women have experienced different things during our careers. And I was going to talk about a few of my stories along the way. If you look for trailblazers, which would be, I would say, any woman that's opened the door for all of us, you don't have to go very far in looking. I think one of the icons, of course, would have been the Queen herself. Can you imagine when she became the Queen back in the late 50s, early 60s there, compared to the rest of the world, what she had to do, and she was very, very young and a single woman at the time, what she would have went through. And I think, she really helped the rest of us along the way. Of course, we've got great Canadians like Christy Sinclair, the most amazing soccer player of our time and of our, moving forward. Roberta Bondar, the astronaut, the Canadian. Just these are fabulous. And of course, now we've got actually at our conference 2 weeks ago, Haley Wickenheiser, the female hockey player. She was our speaker at our conference a couple of weeks ago, who is an amazing woman. Now that she's no longer playing, she just thought she'd go back to school and become a medical doctor. I mean, this is impressive stuff. So we've got all of these women that we can look to. And we have two great ladies of empowerment, and we're so blessed to have at WiLAT and in Canada in our transportation industries of Christine Burr and Marian Robson, who have crashed down doors in government and so on to make the road easier for the rest of us. I'm not saying it solves anything, but it has made the road a lot less bumpy for us along the way. I also want to give a huge shout out to Bob Armstrong, who's not with us on the call today, but he was one of the people, and this goes back to the early 2000s, late 90s, when before CILTNA was even in Canada, it was the Importers Exporters Canada, so i.e. Canada. And he wanted to get women on the board back then, and it was really important to him. And actually, one of the speakers that we had for WiLAT a couple of months ago on our, I guess it was last fall now, on our opening, Isabel Alexander was one of the women that actually joined him, and she has nothing but the kindest and most wonderful things to say about Bob, because he saw that that needed to be done, and he had the courage to do it. So I'm just going to give a short bio, a little bit of my background, but thanks to Christine, I can skip a lot of the boring stuff and just almost jump on right in. So thank you for that. I promise not to bore you to death. But I also want to talk a little bit about the changes that we've seen at the board table, and some of the tips that I've learned along the way. Unfortunately, most of the things any of us learn in our career is done the hard way. So sometimes that's the best lessons, but they are lessons nonetheless. And then I just want to end on a note of gratitude as we close off. right now, all of us on this call, we're at a moment in time like we've never seen before in the Canadian supply chain. We're being held captive, I would say, by external parties that we have no control over. You know, right now we have the lingering CBSA strike. We have two possible strikes of Canada's Class 1 railways. We have actions of piracy in the Middle East on the ships that are trying to bring us our goods. And there's so much more. And I just would like all of you to take the next 20 to 30 minutes and just sit back and take in some information and maybe do some reflection along the way and think about your own journey as you hear a little bit about mine and some of the other ladies before us. But before I begin, I need to do a little bit of audience participation. And I was just wondering if I could possibly get a show of hands. Is there anybody that's new in their job or new in their company where they are or organization at this time? And if there is, if they just, nope, nobody, all right. How about, do we have anybody that's about 10 years in their role or less? Okay, we've got one, all right, great. And so everybody else sounds like they're more seasoned. And so great, thank you for that. So it gives me a little bit of context as we move along. So as Chris mentioned, I'm working in the chemical and ingredient supply chain, which I had no idea there was such a thing until I started working there. And probably a lot of you feel the same in the roles that you have. When I came into the job, I had just sort of ended a career in the financial services. So I was in banking for 15 years before I decided to do something else with my life. And in my role, I was in retail banking. So I started as a teller, worked my way up to being a manager. At the time, I was 29 years old, and I was the youngest manager in the organization. That was, for some of you might have heard of Canada Trust. So I was 29, I was a woman, so I was like their poster child for the great stuff you can do by having your career in banking. And over time, I suddenly realized this wasn't my passion. I had never grown up and said, oh, gee, I really want to be a banker when I get older. And I loved it, and it gave me so many opportunities, but there came a time that I had to follow my passion, and I just had to do it because I just was starting to feel a bit not grumpy, but I didn't have the same energy when I was waking up in the morning to get in there to get to work. And whenever that happens, it's time to move on. So I made the decision to go back to school at 34 years old. I sold my house, quit my job. My parents were thinking I lost my mind. I was a single mom, and I had done everything backwards. I was married at 19, which we did back in those days. All of the rest of you today would go, are you crazy? But that's what we did. And 18 months later, I became a mom, and about a year, not even 10 months later, I became a single parent. So it's one of those things that, life gives you a bunch of stuff, and we just find a way to get through it. And so I made this decision to go back to school and did a program. I got my master's degree in social work, and I was going to go out and make a difference in the world. And then the government changed in Ontario, and they were cutting back on all the social services. So I found myself going, uh-oh, now what? And luckily for me, and I can't stress this enough, ladies, please make sure that you always network yourself as much as possible. And I ended up getting a job at this place called the Canadian Association of Chemical Distributors. And I had no idea of what I was going to do there or whatever, but was given an opportunity through someone that I know. And I thought, what the heck, I need a job. I better give this a go. And I think I was in it for about 2 weeks, and I realized I found my thing in life. And I just love what I did at the association, because no 2 days are alike. And for those of us in the supply chain, we all get that. Every day you're presented with a new, clean slate of what you're going to do today. It's not going to be the same as yesterday. And for me, that was exactly what I was looking for. And I hope all of you feel the same way. So the association and all of its members, it was a boys' club. And I've got to give them tons of credit because we did our first strategic planning session in 2002, and number 3 on the list of things to do was to end it being a boys' club. And, you know, my own personal mission, I became the president in 2005. My personal mission was we needed to have, you know, some diversity on our board. At that time, I was the only woman with 7 men, and it was a you know, big enough step that they had hired a woman. And I can share with you that my mentor, who I adored, I loved him. He was absolutely wonderful. But he did tell me in 2002, the first time he was going to retire, you know, dear, this is exactly how he said it. You know, dear, you could easily do the job, but they're never going to have a woman doing it. Never. And lo and behold, he retired. Another gentleman came in. The association realized that that person wasn't the right person. And then in 2005, I was offered the job. And I have to say that it's one of those things that gives me a lot of pride. We've come a long way. And it's nice to be a part of something that you can see the change and feel it, which is wonderful. So I'm going to give you a couple of tips today, and a couple of the ones that I hope that you'll remember and take with you as you go on your journey further into whatever it might be and wherever your journey takes you. So my tip number 1 is to be honest with yourself. And what I mean by that is, what do you want? Remembering what I said a few minutes ago, I was in banking, which was a great career. But it was never really what I wanted. It was something that was there, presented an opportunity that I was able to take advantage of, but it was not really my passion. And what you really need to do, and sometimes as women, we don't have that opportunity to sit back and say, what is it I really want to do? And I really, if you remember anything from the talk today, just remember that when you find your passion, you're going to love everything about your life, because it all comes together if you love what you do when you go to work every day. When you think about it, most of the time we see our colleagues at work more than we see our own families. So it's really, really important to make sure you're doing the right thing. And I would also say that there's a lot of good to be learned from a bad job or a bad boss. And sometimes that might be that you don't want to be that when you become the boss. So that's a great lesson you can learn even from the worst. Tip number 1B is to be honest with others. And this is a case of if you're taking on the role as the leader or as a boss or as a mentor to someone, you have to make sure that you're good first, and then you can be good for others. So as I mentioned, I started at the Canadian Association of Chemical Distributors, and through our growth through time, we ended up changing our name to Responsible Distribution Canada. The reason for that was we had 2 brands. We had the CACD, which was the Chemical Association, but we also had the Responsible Distribution brand, which I'm very proud. It's Canadian, started in Canada. Our colleagues in chemical manufacturing started Responsible Care for Chemical Manufacturing, and we started Responsible Distribution in 1996 for the transportation or the health and safety or the regulatory side of, if you will, of the chemical industry in Canada. We are the only association that has third-party audits. And what I mean by that, an external environmental firm goes and checks on every single one of our companies to make sure they do what they say they do. And they have to have every single facility audited within a 3-year program, and then it starts all over again. For our large companies that have over 6 sites, and we have about 11 of those, they have to have their head office done every 3 years, but the rest of their facility, it can be taken over a 6-year time period. That's a huge financial commitment on behalf of these companies, because our largest member, as an example, has over 30 sites, and each audit cost over $6,000 just for the auditor, not taking on the part about all of the quality and the stuff that they have to have internally. So I was really proud to be a part of something that's making a difference out there. And I can talk for hours about that, so I'll move on. If anyone has any questions about that, we can always speak offline. Happy to talk about it. But what we really started to see is that there was a slow shift coming in our industry. Women were coming in because companies suddenly realized women, and I'm not making any sexist statements, I'm just going to speak truths, have an unusual skill of organizational abilities. We have the ability to multitask. And these are the kinds of things that suddenly we started to see that not only in the facilities of our members or in any of your facilities, but also at the board tables. We started to see things like a woman CEO at General Motors. Like, wow, who would ever thought that was going to happen? So we started to see those kinds of things. And it really, again, thank you to those women who went before us. And there's still a lot of work to be done. We all recognize that. And we will get there. And hopefully, if it's not with us, it'll be in the next generations that come along. But along with the shift, our association started to move. And I mentioned to you earlier that, it was my own personal passion that I wanted to make sure that we did make this change. I'm proud I can sit before all of you today and say, our board now is 50% women, and we have people of color on our board, and we have people of different ages on our board. And so that's taken a long time, but we got there. And if you can take a bunch of old, mean old guys from the chemical industry and do it, anybody can do it. So I really encourage all of you. Sometimes it's hard to wait. Sometimes it's hard to sit back and go, oh my God, I don't know why this is taking so long, but it does get there. And some of us are happy to share other stories, but it takes time, and you have to kind of do these things gently. You can't expect the change to come overnight. Our association begins to grow up, and that's when we started looking at what else should we be doing, what else can we do, and our why. We started to get focused on what's our why. And as I mentioned, in 2002, we did our first strategic plan. We've now had, I think, 7 refreshes of that, and none of them look the same, but there's still some reminders of what we did back in 2002. So we tested the video before we came on today, and it's not working for sound. So I'm going to, the links are going to be in the presentation. You're welcome to a copy of it. This woman, Robin Hauser, she talks about gender norms and how and why it's taking so long to have a shift to female leaders. And one of the things is the underlying sort of messaging in her talk, excuse me, is that in a lot of ways, women are holding back women. We have to be able to change the conversation. If you hear somebody talking about a woman from an approach, a woman in her role as a leader of, oh my God, look at the way she's dressed today. That's when you have to change the narrative and say, it doesn't matter what she's dressed like. Look at the woman and how incredible she is and what she's doing. And that's up to us. And so slowly you can do it in a, a non-confrontational way, but it is up to us to do that. The link on the left from Instagram is just a short snippet of her talk, but the YouTube link will take you to her. And I believe it's 8 minutes, and I encourage all of you to watch it. It's really good. I would never recommend something so strongly if I, some of the messaging is a bit whatever. This one is an absolute fabulous talk. So please do look it up. And if you have daughters, have them watch it. I've given this now to my granddaughters as well. It's important that we hear this as a woman. So, and that will explain in a lot of ways why it might be taking us a bit longer than we'd like. Tip number 2 is to surround yourself with the right people. One of the lessons that I had to learn, and actually out of Robin's talk, she talks about the likable thing that we want. And probably one of my first biggest mistakes of being a leader was wanting my staff to like me, and how that can get you into a bunch of bad stairs you don't want to go down. And so I hope none of you have done that. And if you're there now, try to get yourself out of it. You need to be friendly, but you don't have to be a friend to your employees, nor should you, because you're going to have to give them instruction. You're going to have to maybe give them a yucky job to do. You're maybe going to have to do something you don't really want to. And if you're their friend, it's far too hard to do that. Keep in mind that you hired these people, or somebody else in your HR has hired these people to do their job. Let them do it. And that is the other thing. If you're in a role, if you've come from one role and you're moving into another, you tend to hang on to both. And that's not doing you any good at all for your own personal journey. You have to let go and do your job, and let those people that you hired do their job. The other thing I learned as a leader is that I know what my limitations are. So I don't want to go out and hire a bunch of mini-me's, because that would be crazy. We'd all be the same and we'd all be thinking the same. You want to have people that think different than you. So I'm not very creative. So one of the talents that I had to make sure that I always had on my team was somebody who was creative and was already thinking about stuff further down the road. It didn't have to do with age. It didn't have to do with anything else. It had to do with their specific skill set, and making sure that you end up coming together and everybody works as one. That is so, so important. Tip number 3 is to never stop learning. And I think this is probably one of the most important ones. And this has probably never been as important as it is today, with the amount of change and the speed and the pace of the change. If you're not constantly learning, you're going to get run over. So it's really important to make sure that while you're enhancing your employees' journey, that you're remembering your own. Because learning will always build confidence. It will ensure that you don't get stale, and it'll also keep you ahead of your competitors. And I just don't mean as an organization, but I mean you, somebody else that wants your job. You want to make sure that you are staying fresh and you can keep your job, and even you're getting it ready for further down the road. Listen to what others are talking about. AI is a great example of that. And I know that one of our colleagues on the call today has an AI note taker working the presentation for her. And I really urge you to start getting used to AI. We had it on our phones now for years and years, and it's too late to be afraid of it now, because that cat's out of the bag. So learn about what you need to know, what you need to know for your job, and what you need to know for the next job that you want. And that's really important for your journey. Adapt and change. And this kind of goes with constant learning. I think the 3 of them kind of, because that is the way of the world. And basically, that old adage of, if it ain't broke, don't fix it. There's a time and a place for that, and I think that a good example is that sometimes, some of the changes we wanted to make were far too expensive. We're a small organization, so we couldn't do it. So sometimes you have to say, okay, we're going to do a 50-50 or whatever, but you have to always keep on top of these things. There probably is a better way of doing it. And one of the ones I was talking about with a colleague yesterday that works in one of our member companies, and she was complaining about the word digitization. And we were both kind of chuckling. And what does it mean? Because it's like artificial intelligence. It's something different to everyone. And I think that in our industry, whether we want to do these things or not, we need to know what they are. We might not be doing them yet, but we need to know what they are. And do stay on the top of all of those, because that's, that's the way of the world, and that's the way we're going. Use what you've learned as a tool. Sometimes you've learned the hard way that, that change might not be necessary right now. I think we were good for another 6 months or to a year. If you've just changed, you really don't want to redo it again. And for any of us that have ever gone through systems changes, we all know what a hellish nightmare that can be. So you try to limit those and as much as possible. Be open to new ideas, and believe it or not, there's always a better way of doing things. If your culture needs a refresh, then maybe it's time for a refresh. And one of the things that I would say to you is that I decided to hand in my resignation or my retirement, whatever you want to call it, on my own schedule. I didn't wait till somebody came to me and said, maybe it's time for you to shift on down the road or whatever. I did it on my own terms, and I would recommend that for most of you if you have the opportunity. And I did recognize that it was time for change for the next generation to come in. And when we were having our like 3-day conferences, by day 2, I used to be able to still be going woohoo, but as I got older, by day 2, I was going woohoo. So I knew, it's time to get somebody different in there. So time for change is time for change. And having courage. And I say to all of you that are on the call today, you're all women of courage already, because you're in logistics and some avenue in the chain somehow. And that already makes you very brave, because it was a predominantly male industry. And so you are having to daily, prove who you are and what you are. So congratulations on being able to do that. That's very impressive, and we all say thank you from the other side. It takes courage to owe up to a mistake, and I know I'm like anybody else. I've done a few in my life, and you have to be able to walk into your boss or to your board or whoever you work for and say, you know what, I think I screwed up and I'm sorry and I've learned from it and it's not going to happen again. And here's why it's not going to happen again. And I truly believe you'll get more respect for that than trying to shuffle it and passing it or putting it under the carpet. Sometimes we have to do that. We just do. And it also takes courage to say no. And that's not a word that very many women are good at. I know I'm not, I'm still not, I'm 63 years old. I still have a hard time to say no. Just practice that. And sometimes you have to, for your own personal self, for the sake of your business, and for the sake of others. But get a little bit more comfortable in doing that. And I know it takes courage. It takes courage to change. It takes courage to have to let somebody go. In our roles, I'm sure most of us at some point in time have had to let someone go. And I have a great story. This one goes back to my banking days, and there was this lovely girl that worked for us, and she just was so wonderful and kind and sweet. And I had to let her go because banking was not her thing for sure. There was never one night that her cash was balanced ever from the day she started. So I had to let her go. And so I was chatting with her, and she was a ballerina, and she was like an accomplished ballerina, but her parents didn't consider that to be any good. So here she was at 25, I think she was at the time. And when I let her go, I said to her, go and do ballet. Just go and do it. Just go. And I have to say, 4 years later, I got a visit from a gal, and it turned out to be her. And she was thanking me and crying and saying, you did me the biggest favor of my life, because now she's an accomplished ballerina. At the time, she was working for the National Ballet of Canada. So, I don't know where the rest of her journey has gone. I've lost touch with her, but she made the time to come back as well, which was pretty special. The other story I'm going to share is not as nice, and I don't recommend this, but it was probably one of the hardest things I ever had to do. I did mention earlier that in 2002, I didn't get the job, and then somebody else got brought in, and then I got the job in 2005, and I had to go over that person's head. And this is not something that I took lightly. I realized that I had to be prepared to resign, which I did. And I spoke to our chairman and our vice chairman and shared with them what was happening in our organization. And we were losing members. We were losing our people coming out to committee meetings. We were losing everybody, quite frankly. And I couldn't do anything about it. They were phoning and complaining to me. And I was the vice president at the time. And I had to, I would listen, and then I would say, you have to talk to our chairman. Like, what was I going to do? So I decided that it was time for me to leave. At the time, it was still CACD, and I handed in my resignation, and then all hell broke loose. And that's, to make a long story short, what ended up happening is that person was gone, and they asked me to stay on, and they gave me the job. And I didn't quit because I wanted the job, and I want that to be, and I say that with sincere heart. I quit because the job wasn't fun anymore. I was no longer having fun. I was no longer happy to go to work every day. In fact, it was the opposite. And I had never in my life experienced anything like that. And I pray none of you ever do. But the hardest thing I ever did was quit a job that I loved. And now I didn't. And I just had to get out. I had to get out. So this whole process took about a month, actually. And needless to say, at the end of the day, the board was very happy with their decision. I was very happy that I was staying on at the association. And I didn't get the promotion to president for another 18 months. I was interim in the, until such time as they named me, but it wasn't a handover, it wasn't a given. And I still had to prove myself. So, and as I say, that was a really tough lesson, and I hope none of you ever have to do it, because it's really kind of shitty, to be honest. My bonus tip is to have fun. And the old school thinking was, if you work from home, you're not working. If you're having fun on the job, you're not working. And I say, if you're not having fun on the job, you're working in the wrong place. I think COVID fixed the whole thing about working from home. Everybody realizes that was baloney, and you probably work 10 times as hard if you're at home, and you're definitely working more than your scheduled hours when you're working from home. The most important thing to do is to have fun, but also work hard. And you can do that, like, as you go along. And again, if you're not having some fun, I challenge you to remove yourself from that environment and have the courage and get out there and find the thing that you're meant to do. Find the place that's going to give you the fun or the happiness that you deserve. And so in closing, I want to just jump back quickly to our motto, if you will, about responsible distribution. And what we say is, what's really important is not what you do when you're being watched, but what you do when nobody's watching. And you want to be proud of yourself at the end of the day. You want to make sure that you're working in a place that meets all of your ideals and what you believe in. And again, if you're not, if the company's not willing to change, if sustainability is your thing and you want to see change, first of all, be the person that to see the change through. So put yourself there and say, I think we need to do this, and this is what I'm prepared to do. And more than likely, it will be happy. But be kind along the way. And I love this Maya Angelou quote. I'm a big fan of Maya Angelou's. And I think it says so much. When you're the boss or the leader, it's so hard sometimes to keep real. And because, you've got so much pressure on your head. But you know, if you see an employee and they look like they're having a bad day, they probably are, and all they need is for someone to say, "Are you okay?" And so I encourage you, don't mistake any of the tips along the way that you can't be nice to someone because you're their boss. Remember, I said just don't be their friend, but you can be friendly, you can be kind, and you can be generous of your heart at all times. And you'll be a great leader if you can put those kinds of combinations together. And I just want to say thank you to all of you, because now you're all a part of my journey, of my work memories. And thank you so much for your time and for listening today. And I know that the greatest gift we can give anyone now is the gift of our time. And I thank you for sharing your gifts with me. And I'm quite happy if there's any questions, you're welcome to reach out privately if you wanted to ask any questions about anything along the way. I'd love to. Thank you, Cathy. I'd love to talk to anybody anytime.
Thanks so much. That was wonderful, Cathy. Any questions for Cathy? I guess I have one. You know, you talked a little bit about your industry and what it does. It's a very technical field. How do we convince the younger generation of women to come into fields that stereotypically are viewed as male dominated and maybe big and messy and not that interesting?
You know, I like to think we're doing a great job because, as I mentioned, you know, we've got a lot of women, but mysteriously, all the women are on the personal care side, the cosmetics, the shampoo. You know, they're not in the industrial side, which is a darn shame, because that there's a lot of opportunities. Most definitely, I think, you know, what I try to say to anybody thinking about, and we go out to a lot of colleges and universities, and we set up a table there, and we're, you know, trying to bring in young people and women, and you know, what we talk about them is the opportunities, that there's so many opportunities in our field. It's incredible. And we're not just looking for chemists. We're looking for, you know, people that are health and safety. We're looking for regulatory in a big way. I mean, the regulatory people in our industry start at like 100,000 a year. So there's so much opportunity. And health and safety, I mean, we consider ourselves as champions of health and safety. By the nature of our industry, we have to be the best at health and safety. We want our workers to go home to their family every night. That's our tagline. So I encourage people to come in and say, okay, if you come in and maybe, you know, you're starting as a cleric in a clerical role, maybe like in inside sales or something, the sky's a limit of what you can do, because our association, we're very unique, is that we don't just have one area. We're everything from like water treatment, we're food industry, we're in personal care, as I mentioned, but we're also in things like construction, you know, paint and coatings, inks, you know, all of that kind of stuff. So it's so vast. We actually are in 25 different market sectors. So if you have an interest in something else, like in construction, just let's say a woman wants to, we can help you there. Like you know, you can be selling into the construction industry. So that's what we try to sell, is the diversity, not only in people, but diversity in opportunities that you can have. Thanks for the question, Christine. I appreciate that.
Just following on that, Cathy, I really enjoyed your talk. It was just terrific.
Thanks.
Are the women, I'm not sure where things are in terms of women and academic qualifications. Do they still tend not to be as much in engineering, for example, or in chemistry or in physics? I mean, is that part of the reason they're in kind of female type products?
I think, and I can share a great story, because one of the other things that we have in our organization, which I really, all of you, please, if you want to talk about this with me, please do reach out. We have a program, it's called You Be the Chemist, and it's actually a program to teach teachers how to teach chemistry. Because most
Mm,
teachers are, they have a bachelor of English or something like that,
yep.
right? Of lit, bachelor of literature or whatever, and so they don't want to teach chemistry because they're not comfortable with it. So we have a program that's very hands-on, and what it does is it helps whoever's trying to teach children, and it goes from kindergarten to grade 8, how to do things, but in a hands-on way. So we're now sort of
Ah,
getting, and we have a sort of a method to our madness. We're also looking for future employees down the
mhm.
road, right? But it's a fantastic program, and we also say it's great for Girl Guides. It's good for
Mm.
summer camps. If it's good for birthday parties, if you have young children and you want to do some cool
Oh,
stuff at a birthday party, we're happy to give it to parents. It's all done in both official languages. Everything is laid out, even tests and answer sheet, everything.
wow.
We lay out everything for the teachers. And then depending on where they are, if they need a helping hand, if they're in a sort of a low income area, we'll also give them like the safety goggles. We'll do everything we possibly
Mm.
can to make it easy. But the other thing we do at the end of it for grade 7s and 8s, we do what I call, it's like a spelling bee, except it's for chemistry. And what's really great is for the nerds who have never been athletes, they suddenly have something. And I say that because that's what the moms come. The moms come to us crying afterwards. Like, we go all over the
Mm.
country. And what all this to say, what I wanted to share was, there was unfortunately, she just passed away last year, a professor at the University of Alberta, because we tried to hold these chemistry bees in universities or colleges across the country. And that also gives an opportunity to the university or college to show off their place
Mm.
and then give the tours and that kind of thing. And she was on her way. So she came and spoke to our group and did a demonstration, which I was, I think I was probably about maybe 55 years old at the time. I was so excited. She even had me in her hand. Like, she was just so great talking to the kids
Yeah.
and stuff. And she was doing magic with chemistry, which was just
Ah,
unbelievable, right? And she was on her way to Sweden for a global conference. There's been such a change. Now 53% of registrations in colleges and universities around the globe are female. And
oh,
it's throwing everything out of balance. Now they're getting panicked. Oh no, like, there's too many women now. And so she was on her way over to say, tough bananas if you guys are worried
yeah,
about it. This is great stuff, right?
yes.
So I can honestly tell you, statistically, there's more women than ever getting into STEM. Um, but it's what they do after.
Yeah.
Like, suddenly, a 27-year-old woman finishes school, then suddenly she decides she wants to stay home and start a family. So some things change, and it delays the
Yep.
process, maybe,
Yep.
right? So that's where I would say I see a little bit of a shift. And but we are seeing women, but my specific industry, we've got a long way to go still,
Mm.
to bring them in. There's a lot of women, um, all from 40 and up. And I think it's the less than 40s, the youngers than that, it's a little bit less. I'd like to see that grow for sure,
Mhm. Mhm.
for
Well,
sure.
Thank you.
this is terrific, Kathy. And that last example, I'm
Thank
going
you.
to follow up with you to find out more about the packages that are available.
Yeah.
Please.
Yeah, we promised everyone an hour for these little get-togethers. So I think I'll turn to Rebecca, who has one slide to share, I think, 1 or 2 slides, just some wrap-up information.
Are you seeing full screen?
Yeah,
Okay. So for those of you who aren't already members of CILTNA, I think there's a couple of us who are, and some who are not. Just to let you know that we'd be really glad and happy to have you join CILTNA. We have something for everybody, wherever you are on the career ladder. We have a category for you. Members of the Institute pay a yearly membership fee, and these fees go directly into developing and delivering a range of services and benefits that are offered to you. We offer opportunities to build your network, professional designations in which members enjoy SILT post-nominal letters, representing a level of membership that demonstrates a high level of expertise in your profession. We also offer career development through free webinars, conferences, and meetings. And members also receive information such as the weekly e-newsletter with job postings and a digest of important news covering regional and North American events in logistics and transport. And exclusive to members, you would also have access to the SILT Knowledge Center, in which members have unlimited access to SILT International's vast collection of logistics and transport resources in 7,000 global newspapers, magazines, and journals. To learn more about this, you can visit our website at www.ciltna.com, or you can contact myself, Rebecca Whalen, at admin@CILTNA.com. And as well, our next one. So if you'd like to connect with us and get updates on WiLAT events or anything CILTNA events, you can email me at admin@ciltna.com, or you can call the number 613-209-9992. And just let me know, and I can add your email to the mailing list. We'd be happy to have you join any of our events. And I think the last one, we will see you in September. On September 25th, it'll be our anniversary celebration. It's our first anniversary. We have something planned with a special guest. So look forward to that. I'll be sending out an email in the next little bit anyway, giving more details, because we'll need people to sign up ahead of time, because there'll be a kit that'll be mailed to your home. So we will be doing something interactive. So we're excited about that. So I'll hand it back to you, Chris, just to close.
Hey, thanks very much, Rebecca. I encourage you all to circle the calendar for September 25th. I think it's going to be lots of fun. And I'd just like to close by thanking our speaker today, Cathy. That was tremendous.
Absolutely.
I can see why you were president for such a long time. And my goodness, it sounds like a wonderful career. And I think wonderful tips today that I think we could all take away and make use of. So thank you so much. And thank you to everyone who joined today. We'll be making the video available to anyone who signed up. So others will share it, I'm sure. And thank you to Rebecca, who as always keeps us organized and gets us connected. So thank you, everybody. Have a lovely day.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.